media engagement that will be addressed by Nimba County Senator Nyan D. Tweyan Jr. This conference is centered on the passage, as you may be aware, the Senate concurred today on the ArcelorMittal agreement, following the passage of that agreement by the House of Representatives. So Senator Tweyan will respond to the concurrence of the Senate. Senator, welcome to the media.
Thank you. You know, ladies and gentlemen of the media, it is important today to address the media on the passage of the third amendment of the ArcelorMittal during these negotiation period of the third amendment, and we issue a formal statement representing our views and aspirations, and that of the views and aspirations of many Nimbans. My decision to vote abstain on the proposed third amendment to the ArcelorMittal Mineral Development Agreement was not motivated by malice, hostility to investment, or opposition to economic growth. It was guided by history, evidence, and my responsibility as lead senator on concession compliance over the past 2 years. ArcelorMittal Liberia has a documented record of non-compliance with key obligations under the existing MDA, particularly with respect to social commitments to affected communities. That history cannot be ignored simply because new assurances are offered. Abstention in this context was a deliberate position of caution and accountability to send a clear message to ArcelorMittal that we are serious for full implementation of all clauses and commitments in the agreement. During discussion following passage of the amendment by the House of Representatives, sustained advocacy from my office and other colleagues produced tangible outcomes in the interest of the people of Liberia, especially the people of Liberia. Through this process, the Interministerial Committee on Concession and ArcelorMittal agreed to correct several critical omissions and weaknesses in the proposed amendment. These include explicit social benefit commitments such as the pavement. Let me start over. Through this process, the Interministerial Committee on Concession and ArcelorMittal agreed to correct several omissions and weaknesses in the proposed amendment. These include social benefit commitments such as the pavement of the second part of Yikipa Road, improvements and upgrade to roads within the concession area, construction and maintenance of bridges, and enhanced investment in clinics and schools within the affected communities. Our advocacy from day one of taking office also compelled renegotiation by the government to gain financial terms within the agreement. These efforts resulted in a $200 million signature fee, an increase in annual money lesson from 50,000 flat fee to 500,000 United States dollars per annum, an increased social development contribution to the 3 counties from $3 million to $5 million annually. These are not symbolic gains. They are material improvements secured through persistent scrutiny and our policy advocacy. Further, we insisted on the proper consolidation and restatement of the existing MDA and the third amendment, including the insertion of clear termination and revision clauses, provisions that will have allowed automatic extension of the concession after 25 years were removed and replaced with language subjecting any renewal to legislative ratification. This restores the constitutional role of the legislature and protects the long-term interests of the state. Importantly, the IMCC and ArcelorMittal acknowledge clerical and substantive errors in the amendment presented to us, including the omission of Nimba County from the social obligation provision. And that is very important. They acknowledge that. We demanded and received written commitments, including attached correspondence from both the executive and ArcelorMittal, confirming that these obligations will be corrected and implemented, even though we are still skeptical. Despite these advances and improvements, ladies and gentlemen of the press, the people of Nimba and Liberia, I did not vote yes in favor of the amendment. However, voting no would have suggested that we did not make any progress given the controversial depth from which we took this amendment from to this amicable stage with our persistent advocacy. It would have also undermined the technical changes and economic dividends our advocacy was able to achieve as outlined previously. Abstention was necessary because commitments on paper do not erase years of unmet promises. Trust must be rebuilt through performance, not assurances. We are committed to work along these lines with the IMCC and ArcelorMittal. I assure the people of Nimba today and the people of Liberia at large that this process does not end with ratification, but it is just the beginning of our concession compliance oversight. The commitments now acknowledged by ArcelorMittal and the government must be fully, timely, and verifiably implemented. Ensuring that happening and that outcome is my renewed focus moving forward. Our vigilance has already produced results, and we are grateful to the leadership of the Liberian Senate and other colleagues who have given us the benefit of doubt when making our case. Thanks to the IMCC as well for reasoning where necessary. As I close, let me hasten to say that sustained oversight will determine whether those results translate in real benefits for affected communities, the people of Nimba and the people of Liberia. I remain firm in that responsibility, and I will continue to stand for compliance, accountability, and the protection of both county and country interests. Thank you. I will stop here and then I will take a few questions and then we'll move forward.
Well, thanks a lot, Senator Nelson Colette from Spoon. You just mentioned that your vote, your abstention from the process doesn't indicate yes, and it is not a no. Is that what we're getting from you?
Yeah, abstention is that. Abstention, you didn't vote in favor. However, I wanted to make it clear that we have achieved a lot. We started the advocacy 2 years ago when we took office. We've been able to compel ArcelorMittal to begin retroactively implementing the current MDA, as stipulated in a commitment letter to the executive and forwarded to us. We've been able to make them to give huge financial package and dividends to the country through the huge signing fees, increment in the margin from $50 flat rate now to $500,000. So if we have voted no, we've been able to bring them on par to commit to pave the road from Sekimpa to Yikipa. We've been able to make them to commit to maintain schools, clinics, and roads and bridges within the concession area. We've been able to make sure that the document, both the current MDA and the amended portion, be consolidated. We've been able to make them to insert termination clause and revision clause in it. We've done a lot, and our no vote was spoken otherwise that we have not done anything. But because commitments have been made before by AML and they were never honored, even though we are satisfied with all of the commitments, but the fact that they have a history of non-compliance, we could not give them a yes vote on this matter, so we abstain.
So just a follow-up to that, you you were successful in getting ArcelorMittal, or let's say the entire the government of Liberia to make some adjustments, working closely with Metal. To what extent do you think this advocacy was successful? How would you rate the advocacy, and how long do you intend to take this?
You know, I would just rate it that because we're at 0, we are at 50%.
50%.
So implementation will be the rest of it. I wouldn't say much to you until I start seeing tangible actions. That's what I can say. Beginning with the submission of the social obligation and infrastructure plan that you heard many of our colleagues mentioning in there. Until that plan can come and the implementation begin, I will remain skeptical and abstinent.
Zach. Senator, my name is Zach Sherman. I write for Halifax newspaper. In less than a month, you were critical. Had an elaborate press conference, and you talked about the timeline relatively to concurrence of the deal. Now, in less than the time frame you spoke of, why are you in some way supporting this concession that is being concurred by the Senate?
First of all, let me correct you. I did not support it. That's why I did not even sign the report. So that's misinformation in the first place.
That's why I said in some way.
No, not in some way. As a joint committee member, I deliberately did not sign the report to ratify this agreement. And that is the reason why I abstained. And the reason I abstained because we've done a whole lot of work. We suffer along with many colleagues alike, with international partners, to put some of these things together that were accepted. But because of the history of non-compliance, that's why we abstained. And given the timeline, it's legislative politics. You know, the leadership is here. They determine what comes on the agenda. But what I can say is that this agreement should have been passed and concurred with almost 2 weeks ago. But it was because of our advocacy and the time that we asked for to do this scrutiny, to sit with the IMCC and discuss some of these matters that even made it to drag up to this far. So we could not have much more control over the timeline because we don't control the Senate and we are just members. But at least within a short time frame in which we were able to operate, we got a lot, but not satisfactorily, and that's why we are staying.
Senator, this is Bamoto van der Brink for the Liberia newspaper.
Yeah.
In negotiation, there will be give and take. It's going to be 100% on both sides.
Yeah.
You just listed some of the gains your advocacy have brought to Liberia, not just Nimba.
Yes.
Why can you be considerate? I mean, you're giving the company another chance.
You know, that's exactly the point many of the senators were making to me. That all of your fact sheets and issues you brought, many of them have been committed to by the government, and ArcelorMittal, they have incorporated them. But I'm skeptical because these commitments were made before. In fact, it is written in black and white to the Liberian Senate through our advocacy that ArcelorMittal and the government are admitting that there were violations of the current MDA, that there were violations from commitment that they made. So I'm skeptical. That's why I will not give them a yes vote. But yet you have a point. You know, many of our issues were inculcated, they were incorporated, they were committed to. But given the history of non-compliance, my skepticism led me to abstain.
A quick follow-up to that. Senator, one of the issues you raised was non-compliance with the previous MDA coming to where we are.
Yeah.
Considering that now that based on your advocacy, there were some adjustments made, what did Metal say about the non-compliance with the previous MDA?
That is a very good question. So if you see the letter, which will be published to the press upon the president giving my copy, in the first set of the letter, they try to address the current MDA non-compliance issue, what they are doing and what they're going to do, committing that through the government. And then they move on now to the new one, incorporating new items within the current social infrastructure plan that they are doing. So yes, our retroactive implementation of the current MDA is in full force, and we got additional commitments to that, and we're going to be watching the process. And let me say clearly that this is just the beginning of this process. What has been lacking over the years has been follow-up. And that's why we stated clearly to the IMCC that this time around we're not saying only buy and allow this process to go. That's why that social infrastructure plan must be having dates and timeline for implementation should be attached to that. so that we can be able to check the listing about how many kilometers of roads supposed to be paved from this period to the period, how many clinics and hospitals will need to be constructed between this time, and the social obligation need to be timed and fully implemented with our legislative oversight, and we're going to follow them up. A new day has come, a new set of sheriffs are in town, sheriffs that follow up, and sheriffs that carry on with boss oversight. And we'd like to thank you people, ladies and gentlemen of the press too, who have been very, magnanimous in conveying our message to the people of Liberia, putting pressure on the IMCC and ArcelorMittal to do the right thing. And even though not satisfactorily, but as we stand now, our vote is abstain until we see the social infrastructure plan and we see actions on the ground.
Thank you.
That being said, we'd like to say